Every day, we have the opportunity to put beauty into our world. No matter how crazy, difficult, or mundane our lives may seem, we can add our stitches to the fabric of life. We can infuse our days with color and light. We can draw or stitch lines and patterns that lead us home. This is my intent every morning, to ask and answer the question, what do I want to make today? I'm Jennifer Edwards. Won't you join me in making our world a more beautiful place in which to live? Welcome to the Knitterly Arts Podcast, sharing the journey of an artful life. Hello friends and fellow makers, I'm Jennifer Edwards. I'm knitting a life and documenting the days and, well, making all kinds of things. What I love is to think about life through creativity. I like to enjoy my life and move through life with an artistic eye. And so I wanted to pop in before October is upon us and chat with you a little bit today, share what's on my needles, hook, a little bit out of a brand new sketchbook, and introduce a new friend to you who might actually become a co-host in future podcasts. But I don't have a lot of this planned out, so I'm just going to jump right in. I think I mentioned at the beginning of the last podcast that some of what I love, perhaps even more than the making, is this idea that what we're making has a lot to do with our lives, and then our lives as we live them and as they come to us, they often have bearing on what we make. And I wanted to just flesh that out a little bit more this time. One of the things that I think about a lot as a maker is how it takes time. This is not a new concept. It just takes time to make something. We have the slow food movement, we have the slow clothes movement, and I'm sure there are many other slow movements out there. But anything we make with our hands is definitely going to be a slower version of what might be made by a machine, let's say. So when we go to knit, when we go to draw and paint, crochet, spin, any of those endeavors take time. And the thing that I am thinking a lot about here lately, especially with some of my projects that are longer and more involved projects, is I keep telling myself, just stay in the game, Jennifer. Just stay in the game. Stick with it, see it to the end, and one of those projects that I'm doing that with is what I'm calling my mother-daughter sweater. This sweater I introduced to you last time. I have the two sleeves made. They are waiting to be joined at the yoke with the body part, and I'm almost there. I probably have 3-4 inches more because I'm making this a little bit more of a tunic shaped sweater rather than one that hugs at the hips, but one that flows a little more easily over the hips. So it's taking me a little bit longer perhaps to get there, and then once I get to the yoke and I add in the sweaters, I mean the sleeves, add in the sleeves, then I think it will feel like it's going a little bit quicker. I can't wait to get to that pretty yoke. I'm basing this on the Hen Party Pullover by Kristen Nicholas out of her book Color by Kristen. So with this project, I have to stay the course. I am such a, I don't know if it's creative ADD or if it's just being the mind of an eternally inspired person. But I see all these wonderful patterns that I want to knit. I see all kinds of things that I want to make, that I want to try, that's new. And so it is hard for me to stick it in there, to stay with it. And I'm determined to do so with this sweater. This sweater I have now dubbed my SAF sweater. So, you know, a lot of you folks, a lot of people in the knitting world, a lot of the podcasters go to Rhinebeck every fall. And in fact, I think that that's coming up like the third weekend of October. Well, I'm not able to go to Rhinebeck, but I am able to go to SAF, the Southeastern Animal Fiber Festival. And that is much more local to where I live in Asheville, North Carolina. And I went last year with my daughter. I'll meet up with her again. But this year, I am going with 8 other women who are a part of the knitting communities that I lead out of a yarn shop in Winston-Salem. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. I found us an Airbnb that will accommodate 9-10 women, and we are bringing all of our knitting projects. Some of us will be bringing spinning wheels. We're just going to hunker down for the weekend, have loads of fun, go in and out of SAF. Some of them might be taking workshops, some might not, but it's going to be a great weekend in the mountains, and I'm really looking forward to that. So even though this thing is 100% wool and it may still be too warm at the end of October in Asheville to wear this sweater, I'm calling it my SAF sweater, meaning that I have a goal to have it finished in a month. So check in with me. We'll see if I have that done. But this is something that I keep in mind. Whenever life has something for me that you just have to keep doing, keep on task, keep going with, so that you can see it to the end and so that you can see the fruit of your labor. I remember my sweater. I remember other projects that take a long time, and it helps me to stay in the game. So that's one thing. That's one thing about knitting and making things that really encourages me in my personal life, is just keep going. Make the next stitch. Do the next section, whatever that is. And sometimes I even have to just put blinders on and say, okay, I'm going to be right here and stay with this till I see this portion of it done. So for me right now, it's okay, I'm going to get up to the yoke. That's my goal in the coming week. And then I can add the sleeves, and then I can keep going. Another thing that I love about making is marking the significant events in our lives. And not this June, but the June prior, June 2016, our oldest daughter got married. And I had just before that turned 50. And 50 was hard for me to turn a half a century year old, and I think I'm still working out some of that. But one of the things that I knew really certain then is that knitting and handwork, crochet, it was going to take me into my next decade and lead me through these years ahead of me, which I knew was going to be filled with celebrations of all kinds and might also be filled with some losses. As parents age and friends who are grappling with illness, that type of thing, we don't know what the future holds for us. But I am certain that every stitch is going to lead me through that. And one of the ways that I like to move through times like these, which are at the very same time very, very joyful, but are also overwhelming. It's a little overwhelming to put on a wedding. Although my daughter, she just had, incredible ideas and was on top of all the details, and we just made stuff together. We put together the flowers. She had this awesome idea for a chandelier made out of a hula hoop wrapped in ribbon and dripped with silk flowers. It was a great time. But one of the ways that I honored that time and also helped steady myself through all of the details and all of what was happening was to make my Mother of the Bride dress. And I thought that I would show it to you today. Along with the Mother of the Bride dress, I stitched a little handkerchief for my daughter to have with her, tucked into her wedding dress. It was just a linen handkerchief, and I crocheted with crochet thread around the edges, and then I stitched her monogram, embroidered her monogram, her new monogram, with her new initials on it as a gift for her. And then I also knitted a shawl for the rehearsal dinner, and to wear with the dress that I had gotten for the rehearsal and the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding. This shawl is called Interlude, and so it is a beautiful shawl. I have forgotten the name of this yarn, but this yarn, it is unlike anything I'd ever knitted with. It's very, I'm not sure that there's a natural fiber in it. I think it may have mostly viscose and other man-made materials in it. It feels very slippery, but is perfect for a June event because it's really lightweight. And what I did was I entered that yarn on Ravelry to see what projects others had made from this yarn, and a gal had knitted the Interlude shawl with this particular yarn, and it looked beautiful in her photographs, and it indeed turned out perfectly for what I needed for the rehearsal dinner. This dress is completely designed by me. Not only the outer part of this, and I will show you a little bit more close up in a minute, but also the dress underneath. So what you're going to see is that the dress is made from 3 different layers of fabric, very sheer fabrics. The 3 layers of fabric, there's a sheer color underneath. The middle fabric is a lace, and then the top fabric is a very gauzy, pale lilac color. My daughter chose a very light sage green for her bridesmaid dresses. So I asked her if I could go with the lilacs and purples, and she was like, of course. And so it worked really well. I was inspired by a movie that I can't actually recall the name of. It is a movie. There was a book, a classic actually, and the movie was made about the book, and it's set in the 20s. So in the times of the flapper, that kind of straight look to dresses and garments, but then layers also, and over jackets and over pieces. And so I had a lot of fun designing this, sketching it in my sketchbook, coming up with the ideas for it. And I think what I'll do is just pause here and then kind of walk you through some of the different elements of it. It's got a crocheted overlay over top of the dress that is actually separate. It looks like it's a part of it because but you put it on separately. I wore them together on the wedding day. And then this is a mesh stitch, those of you who crochet, and the the little ivy here, the leaf and vine all over it. And then there are some details at the bottom that I'll talk through with you about in just a minute, okay? So I thought I would start at the very top of the dress and give you a glimpse at the 3 different layers of fabric here. This under layer of fabric, and my idea was to have this rough frayed edge showing here at the neck, and then you can see the next layer is the lace layer, and the top layer of the dress is this very gauzy lilac color, and it's of course trimmed here with a trim that I thought went perfectly with it. It is just a basic shell of a dress. There's really no shape to it. It's very straight. And then the crocheted overlay, which is done in mesh stitch predominantly with the picot around the edge, just very slight there that you can see. And then this ivy and leaf vine that goes throughout and actually wraps it around the dress. I will have for you a little close-up video right at the end that you can enjoy where I've taken this outside and shown some of the details out there as well. So this is the bottom. This is the bottom of this overlay. This is actually an edging called the lantern stitch. And then I just added the beads and a little fringe to help give some weight to this very light, airy crocheted thread. And then I made little rosettes that are drawn up in the front, the back, and then both sides of the dress. And you'll also be able to see down here the different layers of the fabric. So this layer of fabric, the very first layer, it actually changes color as it goes down, and then you can see that on one side of the fabric it's one color of purple and the other side turned up is a little deeper color. There's that lace fabric that I just fell in love with, and here's that sheer gauze, and it also has just a frayed edge that I liked, that left frayed with a ribbon edging sewn onto it. So you'll see more of the dress right at the end in a little video, and it was something that I so enjoyed making, and it also functioned to help keep me steady through all of the planning and doing the little details of putting on a wedding for our oldest daughter. So that is another way that I love how our making can blend with our lives. And I think one of the things I've always been after as an artist is to somehow have a whole life of creativity, and not just, you know, studio hours and then you step out of your studio and you cease being an artist. I have always wanted all of my life to be infused with art and color and creativity and texture and softness, and I don't know that I achieved that, but the striving for it, or the longing for that, is one that's very rewarding, and I love thinking about how we can wrap our lives in what we make. And as knitters and crocheters, I think that becomes very tangible and evident as we make things to wear for special times, for just regular everyday, and everything in between. So what I'm wearing, I can't remember if I've ever worn this for one of the podcasts, but this was knitted. I made this up. There's no pattern for this. I just made it up. It's a capelet, and it was actually made in the spring. It looks like spring, and here we are in autumn. But our autumn days right now are in the 80s. Today, in fact, is upper 80s. And I think it's supposed to get a little cooler down into the 70s for the next few days. But this is what we typically have in September, these really hot days. We had cooler days back in August. but there's pretty warm days here. So I'm trying to wear all the things that I'm not going to be able to wear once it does snap and get cold. I was wearing this piece today. This was one that I knitted after a surgery, recuperating from it, and I just used leftover cottons that I had. And so there's all sorts of different things added into this little capelet. This edging is from Kristen Nicholas's book, Color by Kristen. I think that book I use more than any other knitting book that I have. It is a great resource. I love that edge. And I just took different leftover colors, did some Fair Isle and intarsia work, went from one color to another when I ran out of it, but it is the same Patagonia cotton, so it works really well. Did some applique of crocheted flowers and shapes to create the rest of the piece, and then finished it off with the picot edging. And I thought I would let you know about this here, if you can see this. Those of you who are knitters will recognize this as a stitch holder. I call these the old-timey kind. I have several that were my mom's. She still has some of these. But I use a different kind of stitch marker that has kind of a stretchy or plastic piece that goes around what looks like a DPN. Those, for me, hold the stitches a little bit better. But these old ones, this is a great one for making a clasp. So all you do with that stitch holder is you open up, they're metal, and you bend it out so that the metal is going. You won't actually get it to go perfectly straight. It will, whoop, you know, have a little bump. But you want to try and get it as straight as you can so that you can slip beads onto it, beads of your choice. I just happen to have these around, and they just happen to go with the colors that I was knitting this in. And then you fold that back. So where you're wanting to put the beads is on the front part of the stitch holder. So if I can undo it for you here so you can see. So see, the beads are put on this part. This was opened up flat so that the beads could be threaded on here. And then that way you can use this to go through any shawl, clasp a sweater, a capelet, whatever you might need it for. They're wonderful. A lot of my students have made them, and they're just beautiful. The colors that they choose in the beads and that they add onto those clasps. That's a really fun thing. So you can celebrate spring, you can celebrate being well and healthy, even if you've been through some sort of ordeal through your stitching and through your knitting. And then when you wear it, every time you wear it, you can recall that time and be grateful for what you have come through, and be grateful for spring and for sunshine. And we really, really and truly are having glorious days here, even though it's September, even though it's autumn now. And I just actually today got down my box of leaves and pumpkins and gourds and all of that fun stuff to decorate with. Oh, which brings me to, I think last time I told you about my free crochet pattern to make these pumpkins using a cinnamon stick. And then you use the threads here to kind of cinch in for the grooves of the pumpkin. Very, very cute little curly leaf there. I've got all different sizes. You can make them all different sizes depending on the yarn you use, depending on whether you double the yarn or triple the yarn. But it is a crochet pattern. It's a free one on jenniferedwards.com. But yesterday, I was walking by the sale table at our shop in Winston, and I've been thinking acorns, something about acorns in my head, and I had a conversation with one of the gals in the Monday night group, and she was thinking about acorns too, and so I was wanting a big acorn. and thought, well, I'm just going to make one. I don't know whether I'll type this up as a pattern or not, but here we are. Big, huge acorn. Isn't he fun? Sometimes I just think it's so cute to take things that are typically yay high and make them really big. So this yarn was just begging to be purchased and made into an acorn. I will let you know in a future podcast if I type this up as a pattern. There are a lot of crochet acorn patterns out there. They are for the much smaller ones, or I think I've seen them about that big. And I bet if you took one of those patterns, you can just Google crocheted acorn pattern. If you took one of those patterns and you used big, thick, bulky yarn, such as what I used here, which is an Encore mega chunky yarn, and then for this part I doubled a worsted weight yarn, then you would probably achieve something close to this size as well. So it's not quite the size of my head, but it's a lot of fun. I want to introduce to you a new member of the menagerie. Actually, he has been quite a companion to me here in just the week that I've had him. His name is, well, it's quite a long name. His name is Bertram Dalrymple III, and he hails from Bath, England. He has quite a little story that is unfolding in a sketchbook. I'll show you in a minute. Oh, I am in love with this bear. He is a delight, and he's a delight to have around, and we're having adventures already. He is interested in knitting. He wants me to teach him to knit. I'm planning on doing that. I will be sharing his capers and adventures on Instagram, so I hope you follow us there. Bertie is what he is called for short. And Bertie has his own sketchbook here. I have a gorgeous sketchbook that my sister-in-law gave me. And there's a quote on the front by E.B. White, who is a favorite author of mine, was a favorite author when I was a child, reading Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little. And so in this book, I have already started sketches and actually a good bit of writing of Bertram's story. And I have several pages here that really need more images and illustrations, but it will be coming. So there's more writing here and space for some more watercolor sketches. The paper in this is very unique and different. It takes watercolor very differently than my other sketchbooks. It's also quite a cream color. I don't know that you can tell on the video, and I like that. It kind of gives his story a little bit of a nostalgic feel. I'm not being very pristine about my writing here. I'm using this sketchbook as a way of just free writing, free fall thoughts, letting his story come out in whatever shape or form, and not worrying about it too much. So that has been so much fun here. Bertie and his adventures now that he lives with me, and eventually he'll be meeting all of the friends in the dollhouse. And there are actually a few new residents in the dollhouse right now. They came home from the shop, from the knit shop, where they had been living for the summer because I was teaching knitted toys over the summer. So I'm gonna set Bertie down. He wants to be back here, making sure that I share everything that I'm supposed to. But here are some of the friends that have come home from the shop. All three of these are patterns by Susan B. Anderson. As many of you know, she is a fabulous toy maker, knitted toy maker. And we have this wonderful sheep here. It's from a pattern that actually has three different sheep, and I have only knitted this one. I've got the Fair Isle one going. It's on the needles, and I need to finish that sometime. Here is her little owl pattern. I do not have the striping and the change in the color here because I was hoping that the yarn would do that. This particular skein of yarn did change from a light gray to a dark gray. It just didn't change quickly enough as I was knitting him. But he's still cute as a button with the orange nose and feet. I love that pattern. And then this one, oh, I think this is adorable. Any child, I think, would love getting this, or big child like myself. This is her butterfly and cocoon. Oh, isn't that sweet? God, she is quite an amazing lady. And here's the little cocoon for the butterfly. Great fun. Behind me here, you see some recent, I'm just Selbu Mitten crazy. And these are not all the ones that are being knitted. I have red ones going. I might be able to show you those. And I need to knit the other one of this pair, because it's going to be orange with a blue thumb. These are the Mittens. I showed you one of them last time, and now I have two. And they are finished. Shall I model them? Because actually they look pretty good with this outfit. Oh, wow. Gosh. Ellie, you did a great job. They're wonderful, and I'm really enjoying them. I still haven't blocked any of my mittens, but I just think they look fabulous even when they're not blocked. So, Mabonden by Ellie of Skein-Deer Knits. You ought to check that out. I'm already anticipating October 1st to see what the next pattern in her Selbu Mitten bundle is going to be. So they don't take a huge amount of time because they're a DK weight yarn. And even the red and white ones that I have, let me go ahead and I'll just share these with you. The red and white ones I'm knitting here with Nature Spun in there. I've done a couple of pairs in the Nature Spun. It's a Brown Sheep Company wool, 100% wool. Two other pairs I've done in their, what they call their sport weight, but it's kind of a heavy sport, so it makes a nice Selbu mitten for the kind of temperatures we have here in the winter. But this is knitted with the worsted weight of Nature Spun, and it is very nice also. I haven't gotten the thumb yet there, but I've already begun. I'm actually teaching a class, Selbu mitten class, and so I've been using these as the demonstration for that. I have gone a little bit mitten and hand knit crazy. So all the patterns here that I wanted to show you, they have fallen off onto the floor. I think I'm going to take this opportunity to just take a break for a second. I will probably run out of room on my phone for recording, and then I'll come back and finish up with looking ahead to not only what I'm knitting currently, but what I can't wait to get into knitting. And like I said, I am holding on to myself and staying in the game with my Fair Isle sweater because I really want to finish that. But I'd like to give you a peek of what's coming up. So be back soon. All right. One of the things I failed to mention to you about Bertie, the bear, is that if you would like to knit your own bear, you need to get the pattern that's called Vera. It is a pattern by Anita Wilschut. I think that's how you pronounce her name, or maybe Wilschut, W-I-L-S-C-H-U-T. I'll put that down here in the bar so that you can look up that pattern. And again, someone in one of the knitting groups that I have posted this on our private Facebook page that she had found this bear, and I immediately fell in love and had to purchase Anita's pattern and knit a bear for myself. So some things that are coming up for Bertram this fall, hopefully in October for Halloween. He's going to dress up as one of his heroes, and that is Paddington Bear. Paddington was a favorite of mine when I was a kid. I read all the Paddington books, and I absolutely love them. This pattern is by the same gal who created the bear pattern, and it's called An Outfit for Vera. And of course, she cannot, you know, she's not trying to duplicate or replicate the Paddington rain hat and coat, but it looks so similar to that, and I think I'll choose the colors that Paddington wore, the blue hat and the red coat, for Bertie to wear for Halloween, so he can be Paddington. So that's coming up on my needles. I have fallen in love with some new designers I had not heard of before, and both of these are because of a particular podcast that I am just enchanted by. This podcast. I've been watching it for quite a while, but now I'm going back and watching some of the previous ones, and it is, I believe it's called Calibornia. Many of you may already know about this podcast. I absolutely love Pia and Dennis, and just their whole demeanor and way of being in the world, and how Pia loves, I love how she loves to knit her life, basically. And I feel like we're kindred spirits. Several of these podcasters, I feel kindredness to them in the way that they like to live and move in the world, and that is through the making of things with their hands. And so this particular pair of mitts I saw on Pia in one of her earlier podcasts, and I was like, I have to have those. I have to knit those. They're gorgeous. And did a good bit of searching to find them, but actually found the Mayfield Mitts. I think that's what it's called. Let me be sure. Mayfield Mitts by Erica Husser. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. And so I'll just show you. Here's the yarn that I'm using. It's this is actually a Danish yarn I found at our shop. It's another of those really crunchy, kind of raw wools, very grabby. This was Baby Ull, you know, a Norwegian yarn that I had in my stash. Someone had given me about 3 skeins of this, so I'm hoping to use a good bit of it with these mitts as the contrast color. And this is what it's looking like. So the Mayfield mitts, I don't know what I've done with, oh, here's the pattern. I'm just going to briefly show you here. This is where I am in the pattern, and it's got this kind of, looks like a hummingbird to me, and a thistle, what looks like kind of a thistle that's running up the thumb part of it. And so here's my progress thus far. What I love about what this yarn is doing, and what I was hoping it would do, is to go from this dark green here up. It's just very slight, the color change of green, and hopefully by the time I get to the top we'll be at that really bright acid green, and I just absolutely love that. And the pattern is wonderful, beautiful. Here is the stitch pattern on the palm side, and I've already begun the increasing that happens at the thumb. A little bit less involved than the Selbu mittens with that set-in thumb that they have there. And of course, being hand mitts, I won't be knitting all the way up to the top, and I won't be finishing off the thumb. It will just be, it will end right here at the knuckle. And the mitts really are, as much as I adore the mittens, I will probably wear mitts a lot more often here in our temperatures in North Carolina, because we don't get quite as cold as some of the Norwegian and even the northern states here in America. So there is another pair of mitts by Erica Husser that I am dying to make. I have already purchased her pattern, and I've got the yarn waiting. It's actually the same Danish yarn, but in a blues and purples, and hopefully that change will happen there in the background of these. They're called Wishmaker mitts, and they are dandelions. Oh, Uh, when I start making these, I'll have to show you some sketches that I've done of dandelions. One spring, I just did lots and lots of sketches of dandelions, and I love dandelions, much to my husband's dismay. But, but I love dandelions. I don't mind them growing in my yard. So I'm really looking forward to that pattern. A couple of Pia's patterns from California. She has designed the Shine mittens, and I have purchased her pattern, and I also have in my head how I want the yarns. Actually, I'm thinking I will have enough from how this yarn changes color in here, because inside of it, and I don't know that you can see, there's a lot of yardage in here. It changes to yellows, orange, and a deep yellow, light orange, and a deep orange, maybe almost to red and brown. So that's what I would like to use for the Shine, and hopefully it would start here with maybe just the pale brown, go through the oranges, and end with the yellow at the top, you know, like Shine. Wouldn't that be cool? We'll see. We'll see if that works out. She also has another pattern that I have yet to purchase. It's called her Visby Mittens, and I want to knit those. I believe it calls for a DK weight yarn, so I'll think about what I want to use there. And Erica Husser also has another pattern. It's a mitten pattern that I'm dying to make as well at some point this winter. It's gorgeous and has a bird on the mitten, and then this really beautiful stitch work here, color work here at the cuff. And so I don't know the name of that one. I'll share it with you if I get to that this winter. Another pair of mitts that I'm really wanting to knit. I've been teaching Intro to Fair Isle, Selbu mittens. We've got a couple others that are on the calendar that are Fair Isle projects that I'll be teaching. And we have been stocking in the shop the Brown Sheep Nature Spun yarn. We have lots of colors in the sport weight, and then we have some in that worsted line. But I found a wonderful mitt pattern. It's a Latvian fingerless mitt pattern by Beth Brown Reinsel. And this gal, actually I believe she is the author of a fairly well-known book about Fair Isle sweaters. I can't remember the exact title. I'll try to find that out. But at any rate, these Latvian inspired fingerless mitts, she actually calls for the nature spun wool, which I was so excited about. I have lots of this left over. She uses lots of colors, and she's teaching you in her pattern a lot of the Latvian techniques for the Latvian braids, different stitch patterns that are particular to Latvian mittens or mitts. And so I'm very excited to knit up this pair of mitts. You know, am I going to be able to wear all these? Probably not. It's just fun to make them. Absolutely fun to make them. And I do have some socks that I'm considering doing, but I typically like my ongoing vanilla, what we call vanilla socks, which are really not vanilla when you buy the awesome yarns that change colors and patterns for you. So at any rate, that's what I have coming up, that I'm kind of like sitting on my hands to say, wait, Jennifer, you need to stay the course. Stay in the game with your knitted Fair Isle sweater. I also have a crocheted sweater I'm wanting to get to. I may actually break down and start that. Oh, anyway. Last but not least, I did the giveaway. This was not the tote. There was another version of the sheet. This one's mine. And these are available on fineartamerica.com. If you go to Jennifer Edwards, you'll find them there, and you can purchase them in several sizes and shapes. But I did a drawing for that, and the random number generator chose number 9. When I went to look at everyone's name, I had listed them on a piece of paper, and each one numbering them in the order that they came in. It was Angie Kimmel, who is actually a friend that I had met on a couple of occasions. She'd come and taken a class, the Intro to Fair Isle class from me, and She is an indie dyer, yarn dyer. And I got to go out to, I offered to bring the tote to her, and she also chose the knitted poncho pattern, the breezy picot poncho that I showed you in the last podcast. And I got to take that tote bag to her to see her dyeing studio. And would you know, I didn't get any footage of that. I could have kicked myself. I thought about it the next day that I really should have taken some video footage of my visit with her that day. So I'm going to do that at some point in the future. Her name is Angie Kimmel of Camel City Dye Works. She's on Etsy. She also is on Instagram. And I'll put all of this stuff in the bar below here so that you can visit Angie and see the gorgeous yarns that she dyes. She's very busy here lately. She just had a trunk show in Charlotte. She has been asked to do like a signature colorway for a particular event coming up. She's a very busy gal in October, and those of you going to Rhinebeck, you would be able to meet her because she's going to Rhinebeck this year. I was tickled that Angie's name was drawn. She is a dear person, and I absolutely love her yarn. I had bought this yarn from her back in the spring of last year, and I have yet to knit something with it. I just want you to see these gorgeous colors. This is called Midnight in the Garden. I mean, how scrumptious is that? Camel City Dye Works, and this is the heels and toes that came along with that. Beautiful colors. She's now into speckles. Gorgeous colors, gorgeous bases of yarn. I think she's gotten into some cashmeres here lately. So anyway, you'll want to check her out. That's all I have for you today. It is enough. But I'm delighted to be with you. Bertie and I are delighted to be with you. It's always wonderful to share how our stitches are leading us through life, giving us so much joy. It's a delight to be able to share my work with you, how I love to draw and paint, knit and crochet, and just basically make with my hands and see life through that avenue. Thanks for listening to me. Do follow on Instagram. You'll see more of Bertie's adventures, and I will see you in the next podcast.